Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Ah, there we go.
We are now streaming live to social media and 1 minute till broadcast airtime. $30 till title sequence. Title sequence is now playing.
Recording in progress.
Till broadcast airtime. And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. I want to call this City Council meeting of the Durham City Council to order at 7 p.m. on Monday, October the 18th, 2021. And certainly want to welcome everyone here tonight. I want to welcome all my wonderful colleagues, our great city staff, and everyone who's listening in on this meeting or attending this meeting in some way. We're very happy to have you. Colleagues, as we begin our important work together tonight, I ask you to please join me in a moment of silent meditation. Thank you. Councilmember Reese, would you please lead us in the pledge to the flag?
I will, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, colleagues, city staff, and folks watching online. I will now say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. I had to do it without you last week, Councilmember.
I'm sure you did great, Mr. Mayor.
I did fine. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schewel.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freelon.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Middleton. And Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, we'll now move to ceremonial items. And the first ceremonial item is for Doc and Carrie Jordan Day. And I'm going to ask Councilmember Freelon, who brought this to us, if he would do the honors tonight. And receiving this from Councilmember Freelon will be Delatra Hollinger, Executive Director of the National Association for the Preservation of African American History and Culture, who is here with us tonight as well, and will be able to say a few words after Councilmember Freelon's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, colleagues, staff, and City of Durham watching on the internet. Whereas Professor Doc Jackson DJ Jordan and Miss Carrie Thomas Jordan were residents of Durham, North Carolina, residing at 1801 Fayetteville Street in historic Hayti on the campus of North Carolina Central University. And whereas Professor DJ Jordan served as president of Edward Waters University in Jacksonville, Florida, and president of Kittrell College in Kittrell, North Carolina, his academic positions also included Vice President at Morris Brown College, Dean of History and Pedagogy at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, where he also served as Director of the National Teachers Training School, Head of the English and Education Departments, and was the first and only history professor at NCCU for more than 21 years. And whereas Miss Carrie Thomas Jordan served as the Gene Supervisor or Superintendent of Colored Public Schools between 1923 and 1926, Miss Jordan appealed directly to philanthropist Julius Rosenwald and was successful in uniting the African American community by single-handedly raising thousands of dollars through rallies and community meetings to construct 12 new Rosenwald schools for African Americans in a separate and unequal public school system. This was done without financial support from the Durham public school system. And whereas the standard curriculum for Blacks emphasized sewing, dressmaking, cooking, and farming, Miss Jordan rewrote the curriculum using textbooks that were utilized in white schools to place emphasis on spelling, geography, and nature study. She raised $1,500 to plan the first African-American countrywide commencement exercises, a tradition which continued for over a century. And whereas Professor Jordan trained Black teachers and developed workshops for Black educators throughout the United States, working with W.B. Du Bois, working with Carter G. Woodson for the advancement of Black education. Perhaps his most noted editorial as a civil rights leader was an open letter he wrote to President Woodrow Wilson in July 1917, a blistering rebuke of Wilson's policies on African Americans that blamed him for the East St. Louis race riots of 1917. In the aftermath of the riots, the NAACP estimated that over 100 Blacks had been killed and more than 6,000 left homeless. His courageous and persuasive remarks were published in many Black newspapers and resonated with Blacks across the country. Governor Thomas Bickett, fearing increased Black anger, sent his letter to the U.S. Attorney General Office and the FBI. And whereas Professor Jordan and Miss Jordan's commitment to political advocacy, social justice, civil rights, and service to mankind was indeed remarkable. Their life's work was impactful, historic, and transformational. Their significant contributions heretofore have never been formally acknowledged. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Schewel, the mayor of the city of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim October 18th, 2021, 155 years since the birth of Professor Doc Jordan Jackson Jordan on October 18th, 1866 as Doc and Carrie Jordan Day in Durham, and do hereby honor and recognize the pioneering work and achievements of these civil rights icons and educators. Witness my hand this 18th day of October 2021. Stephen M. Schewel. Thank you.
Councilmember, thank you so much for bringing us that. And I learned a lot reading that proclamation the first time. And thank you so much. So Delatra Hollinger is with us, and we welcome you. You're now able to speak, and we welcome you for a few moments of comments.
Thank you, Mayor Schewel. Good evening, members of council. I'd like to thank the city council collectively, and as well as individually, and especially Councilmember Freelon for bringing this item, this ceremonial item to the city council. I am Delatra Hollinger. I serve as president of the National Association for the Preservation of African American History and Culture. I also have the honor of being the great grandnephew of Doc Jackson Jordan and Carrie Thomas Jordan. Their accomplishments and contributions to Kittrell, North Carolina. He was president of Kittrell College as well. Greensboro and Durham and the state of North Carolina spanned 60 years, where they made numerous contributions to education as well as civil rights at a time before we even knew what a civil rights movement was, during a time when it was very dangerous to do so. The letter that he penned to President Wilson was quite courageous for 1917. And the Jordan family is elated that the city is finally recognizing their contributions. Their final resting place is at Beechwood Cemetery. their home was formerly located on North Carolina Central University's campus. It was demolished in 2003. But we just want to say thank you to Mayor Schewel for declaring a day in their honor in the city of Durham. We're thankful, we're grateful, and we hope that this will be just the beginning of really dissecting their contributions. And most importantly, we want the young people to know so that they can be inspired, so that they can be encouraged, and so that they can go out inspired by these two individuals and make positive changes happen in their respective communities. So thank you again. Thank you.
Mr. Hollinger, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you being with us. Thank you. Now we'll move to our second ceremonial item, and this is Mammography Awareness Day. And Councilmember Freeman is going to do the honors with this proclamation. And I believe that Ms. Lisa Hampton is here to make remarks after Councilmember Freeman does the honors. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank you for the opportunity, acknowledging how many women are impacted by breast cancer, for the opportunity to read it this evening. And whereas October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the month dedicated to increasing public knowledge about the importance of early detection of breast cancer. And whereas National Mammography Awareness Day is observed annually on the third Friday in October as part of the National Breast Cancer Awareness Month established during the presidency of William J. Clinton in 1993. And whereas October 15th, 2021 is the 28th anniversary of the National Mammography Awareness Day, MAD. This day serves as a reminder to all women that mammograms are the best method of early detection of breast cancer. And whereas the fabulous ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, under the leadership of the international president, Dr. Glenda Glover, is seeking to raise awareness about the effects of breast cancer through its 2018-2022 international program, exemplifying excellence through sustainable services. And whereas Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated encourages women ages 40 to 44 to begin their annual screening mammography and seek to help 100,000 women by sharing information concerning breast cancer to increase awareness regarding the risk factors that contribute to breast cancer. And whereas Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated launched the Alpha Kappa Alpha mobile mammography unit on the campus of Texas Southern University, providing access to the mammograms to the uninsured. Now, therefore, I, Stephen Schewel, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim October 15th, 2021 as Mammography Awareness Day in Durham, and hereby encourage healthcare services, hospitals, clinics, and insurance companies to deliver affordable options so every woman and every income will have easy access to mammograms and be informed on their risk of breast cancer through lifetime screenings. Witness my hand on the 15th day of October, 2021. Stephen M. Schewel, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Thank you for reading that.
Thank you.
And now we will hear from Ms. Lisa Hampton. Ms. Hampton, welcome, and we welcome a few words from you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Schewel and the members of the Durham City Council. My name is Lisa Hampton. I am the co-chair of the Women's Healthcare and Wellness Committee for the Alpha Zeta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I will be providing comments on behalf of our president, Susan Sharpless, and the Alpha Zeta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Since 1928, the chapter has been an integral part of the Durham community. My sisters and I are deeply gratified and appreciative of the Durham City Council proclaiming October 15th, 2021 Mammography Awareness Day in Durham. By doing so, you honor and lend support to our sorority's efforts to highlight the importance of mammography screening, to the early detection and treatment of breast cancer. Breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer among Black women. The American Cancer Society reports African Americans have a 31% higher risk of dying from breast cancer than any other ethnic group. These statistics underscore how vitally important it is for women to begin annual screening mammography between the ages of 40 and 44. In addition to acknowledging Mammography Awareness Day, every October during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, our sisterhood joins in other efforts focused on increasing awareness of breast cancer prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and funding research to find a cure for breast cancer. Some of the engagement activities this month include share information about the disease to educate our members and the community, encourage members and friends to perform breast self-examination and schedule mammograms annually, salute breast cancer survivors in our chapter, encouraging them to share their stories on social media, sponsor and serve as hostesses at Lincoln Community Health Center Breast Cancer Awareness Workshop, and a webinar presenting jointly with other sororities in the Triangle area, which will be held this Sunday, October 24th, 2021. Again, thank you for joining us in acknowledging Mammography Awareness Day this year and our ongoing efforts to combat breast cancer. Thank you, Mayor Schewel and the members of the Durham City Council.
Ms. Hampton, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for bringing us this very, very important proclamation, and thank you for the work that you all are doing with your sorority to improve the situation. And I'm just very, very grateful. I know we all are for the work you're doing. Thank you so much. Colleagues, we've had two great ceremonial items, and I want to just say, Councilmember Middleton, we know you had some connection problems. We were getting texts from you that you weren't able to get on, and we are glad that you were able to work it out. So thank you. Glad to have you.
Good to be here.
Colleagues, it's now time for announcements by members of the council. I'm going to begin tonight with two announcements. One is I just want to say how excited I am that Chief Patrice Andrews is back in Durham. I knew Chief Andrews before she was a captain, before she moved up in the ranks of the Durham Police Department, and she is going to be an absolutely great chief for the city of Durham. When she left Durham, I felt pretty strongly that she would one day be back in Durham as our chief. And I am so excited that she is. And of course, we on the council can only look from afar at the appointments of staff. But I want to thank you, Madam Manager, if you don't mind coming on the screen for just a minute. Just want to say thank you for making what I think is an absolutely magnificent appointment. And we are looking forward to Chief Andrews getting started, but just wanted to thank you and commend you for that appointment.
Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. My second announcement is another piece of good news, which is the CDC website reports that 85% of Durham residents aged 12 and above now have at least one vaccine. That is a great accomplishment. And I want to thank my colleagues on the council for a lot of the important ways in which you've participated, including funding the 45 community health workers who I know are making a tremendous difference. Not only are our vaccines up, but our equity is improving greatly. We're still not where we want to be in terms of equity or the total number of our vaccines. But I will say that in terms of our 65-year-olds, we have reached a very equitable position. 99.9% of our residents over 65 have now received at least one vaccine. And so if you're that one person out there, go get that vaccine. But colleagues, I'm very happy about this. We continue to creep up every day. And of course, we know now, and that's over 12. That's not just over 18, that's over 12. And we know now that soon we will be having our young people of 5 and above able to get vaccinated. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue to do well. Our positivity rate, I just looked on the CDC website for that, is down at 3.3%, continuing to fall. The number of cases is continuing to fall. And I'm very hopeful that I once thought we had, a couple months ago, I thought we'd turned a corner. I now believe again that we have turned a corner, and we'll see how that goes. This virus can definitely surprise, but I want to appreciate our community. If we keep doing this, we will be able to modify our indoor mask orders before long. But for now, we need to keep them in place, but we're evaluating them on a weekly basis, and just so appreciative of our community's good work. It really relies on everyone. All right, those are my announcements. Colleagues, other announcements tonight? Other announcements by members of the council? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo your accolades for all the work around vaccine equity and all the many partners we have in the community who've been hosting vaccine events, even in the rain, for many of our residents, and just encourage folks to continue to get vaccinated and be ready for their boosters. I also just want to take a moment and just share the moment of silence today for our General Colin Powell and his passing, and just noting that his origins in the Bronx has a very close tie to my child rearing in the Bronx, and I felt a need to just share his work from coming out of the South Bronx into Powell, into the work he's done out into the U.S. has been far and above a great model for who and how I know lots of young people from the Bronx have looked up to. I also just wanted to say, as in hearing the news of our Congressman David Price's retirement, or pending retirement next year, I really want to take a moment and just say thank you for the many, many decades of service. I believe he served over 30 years for us here in Durham, and he's been a tireless fighter for what's been needed here. And I want to make sure that we continue to support the work that he has been doing, and over the next year, kind of push in a little bit more, as I know his work on transportation has been vital to what we need here in Durham. And lastly, I just want to share that early voting has started, and I want to make sure that folks understand that the process continues from the primary to the general, and you start all over again. And October 16th was the first day of early voting, and the last day for early voting will be October 30th. There'll be sites, the 6 different sites once again, and 5 different sites once again, and election day will be November the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those announcements, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Let me firstly thank all of you colleagues for your patience and your assistance in getting me on the meeting today. Nothing wanted to cooperate, but you guys are awesome. So thank you so much, and pardon my tardiness. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, can I say just how weird it is, yet oddly gratifying to see you drinking from that mug of us? It's almost like, no matter what happens, we're all family and we all draw from the same well. So it's a little weird, but it's gratifying too. So I want to thank you.
Yes, it's funny. It was just my clean mug. I didn't think about it until I saw it on the screen. I'm like, oh, right.
But I saw you lift it up. It's like we're on this kissing throughout the whole process. We're all family, no matter what happens. So thank you for using that mug tonight. As brothers and sisters kissing, you know what I mean? I do want to thank Councilmember Freeman for invoking the name of Colin Powell tonight. I had a note tonight. I just wanted the record to reflect that his name was indeed called in this space tonight, and just acknowledge what he has represented, not just for the country, but for so many young boys and girls, particularly boys of color growing up in the inner city of New York as I did. I remember reading his voluminous biography and schlepping it around as a young man and just being riveted by his story. And on behalf of also the 1,000 Black Men Initiative, we've been talking a lot about leaders and men who inspire us and who stand in a pantheon of those that inspire us. We want to send out condolences to his family and his friends, and indeed to a nation that has lost such a great leader, truly a transcendent leader who put principles over partisanship. So tonight we honor the service of General Colin Powell, Secretary of State, first Black Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of State for the United States of America, trailblazer. And I'm going to thank again Councilmember Freeman for putting his name in record tonight here in our proceedings. Also, Mr. Mayor, I want to follow suit with congratulating Chief Patrice Andrews, Chief Designate. Patrice Andrews will be assuming leadership of our police department. I also want to congratulate City Manager Page on what I think was a masterstroke of a hire. Some years ago, when I participated in the delegation to Boston, I wasn't in office yet on behalf of the city. Captain Andrews at that time was part of that delegation. And even then she demonstrated an understanding of the need and reform that needed to occur in not just Durham, but in American police departments. She was very much in tune and not resistant, but embracing of changes that a lot of us were calling on for policing in the country, and continues to do so. I could not think of a better fit to come back to Durham and to build upon the incredible work that Chief Sarah-Lynn Davis started here in the department. So I just want to send congratulations out to my friend and soon to be the Chief of Police of the Durham Police Department. Our prayers to her and her family, as well as the whole family will be impacted by, I know, these incredible duties she takes on. And looking forward to her doing great things and continuing to make our police department a model for others, not only in the state, but around the country. May God bless her, God bless her family, God bless our city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Any further announcements? All right, colleagues, thank you very much. We will now move on to priority items, and I'll first ask the city manager if she has any priority items tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the Durham City Council. This evening, I have only one priority item, and it is agenda item number 7. It is the outdoor seating ordinance. Attachment number 2 has been updated. That is all I have for you this evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. Madam Attorney, any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. The City Attorney's Office has no priority items tonight.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Madam Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. The City Clerk's Office likewise has no priority items.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, we'll now move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of items that the council has previously worked on in work sessions. The consent agenda can be approved by a single vote of the council. Items can be pulled from the consent agenda by members of the council or members of the public, and if pulled, will be held until the end of the meeting for consideration. I'll read the consent agenda now. Item 1, approval of City Council minutes. Item 2, Racial Equity Commission appointments. Item 3, request to carry over funds from fiscal year 2021, amend the fiscal year 2021-22 budget and other grant and capital project ordinance and internal service fund spending plan amendments. Item 4, resolution endorsing the Protect the Right to Organize Act. Item 6, funds provision agreement with Step Up Durham and Steady Platform, Inc. Item 7, outdoor seating ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
8, yes.
I don't want to pull that necessarily, but given the manager's priority item, if we could find out how the ordinance changed before we vote, that'd be awesome.
Okay, I didn't understand that there was a change in the ordinance, but maybe there is.
Oh,
And so, Council member, let's pull that. Let's just go ahead and pull that.
Okay, fine. Sorry, my bad.
No problem. No problem. Item 8, Twin Lakes annexation ordinance correction. Item 9, contract with families moving forward for emergency shelter services. Item 10, contract with Open Table Ministry, Inc. for emergency shelter and homelessness prevention services. Item 11, contract with Project Access of Durham County for emergency shelter and rapid rehousing services. Item 12, contract with Urban Ministries of Durham for emergency shelter services. Item 13, contract with Volunteers of America of the Carolinas for homelessness prevention services. Item 14, interlocal agreement reauthorizing the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Item 15, sewer outfall inspection program South Project. Item 16, state contract purchase Caterpillar 963 track loader. Item 17, acquisition of 619 Buren Road, PID number 193170 for the future expansion of Lake Mickey. Item 18, City of Durham Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Energy Action Plan.
Mr.
Item
Mayor,
19,
I didn't want to pull the item, but I did want to comment and just say I wanted to say that I'm really excited about the carbon neutrality and renewable energy action plan. And I'm looking forward to adding the equitable and green infrastructure bond to that and moving more work forward in that green space.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item 19, proposed agreement with Durham County, Quaker Creek Farm Solar LLC and Duke Energy Carolinas LLC for application of the Duke Energy Green Source Advantage Program. Item 20, sale of property located at 114 North Plum Street, PID number 111656 to Habitat Humanity of Durham, Inc. Item 21, contract ST315 unpaved roads improvements 2021. Item 22, utility extension agreement with Foxfield Land Partners LLC to serve Umstead Grove. Item 26, expansion of the long-time homeowner grant program to include the Walltown neighborhood. And I'm going to pull that item. There are some people here to speak on that. Item, so you've now heard the consent agenda, and with the exceptions of items 7 and 26, I'll accept a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Councilmember Caballero, that we approve the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to item 24 under the general business agenda, public hearing, City Council salary adjustments. And we will have a public hearing. I believe we're going to hear from Mr. John O'Lora. Mr. O'Lora, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I'm John O'Lora. I'm the acting budget director. And this is a public hearing to receive comments regarding the City Council's salary adjustments.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Lora. Colleagues, you've heard the report from staff. I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. And I'm going to ask, first of all, are there members of the public who would like to be heard on this item? I see Ms. Jacqueline Wagstaff, a former member of this body, is here tonight to speak on that item. Madam Clerk, will you please make Ms. Wagstaff available to be heard? Ms. Wagstaff, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, always a pleasure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ms. Wagstaff. Glad to have you.
Okay, glad to be here and always a pleasure. Number 24, I'm speaking on it just to bring to your attention that at this time during this pandemic, it seems like it's very insensitive to be pondering the increase of I'm not even call it a salary, it's called a stipend increase for City Council at this time. I heard a couple of comments some weeks ago at the work session about, increasing the stipend. It would increase more participation in marginalized communities and members and underserved communities and underserved members. But I don't understand that logic. When you increase that stipend, you increase that filing fee. If we have people of low means that can barely afford to run for office now, and it's not just about the filing fee, it's also about what goes along with that even after you file to run. So while you may have people that may be able to muster up the $200+ to file, they're never going to be in the game because of what it takes politically to run a campaign in Durham. And we're seeing that now with the current election that's going on. So we know that this notion that if you increase that money, you'll have more people of low means that would be able to enter this race. That is not a true statement. But also, just at this time, you know, I've referenced this many times in the chat that you do have a council member that works every day full time, has a whole family, and is able to perform her duties as a council member and never asks for anything from this council when it comes to increasing salary. And I've only heard that from one individual. Well, my answer to that is that individual may need to go find a job and do what everybody else does if they need money. The council is not that place for it. When this city incorporated Durham, they didn't incorporate the council to be a full-time council. And as we know, there's only really 4 meetings that y'all entitled that you obligated to be a part of. That's 2 work sessions and 2 general body meetings. After that, everything you do is strictly ceremonial and things that you do by choice. You don't have to go to a ribbon cutting if you don't want to. You don't have to show up at a PAC meeting if you don't want to. But those 4 meetings, if you miss 3 consecutive ones, then you start that process of removing council members that don't attend those meetings. But this is a part-time position and it's a public service position. And if you got in it because you wanted to make money, then this should not have been the place that you went to try to make money. You should have went into corporate America and got a real job to make money. That's all I have to say on that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard on item 24? I see Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, welcome. You also have 3 minutes. Mr. Hughes, are you prepared to speak? We can't hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, now we are. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Donald Hughes, and I am a resident here in Durham. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to this proposal to raise the pay of city council members by nearly $10,000 a year, which will cost taxpayers almost $1 million over the next 10 years. At a time when many Durham residents have lost their jobs and are hurting economically due to the global pandemic that we know as COVID-19, this proposal is tone deaf at best. With federal and state eviction moratoriums no longer in effect in Durham, and the Durham Emergency Rental Assistance Program struggling to assist residents, with some receiving no response since May, this is a punch in the gut to hear this body discussing giving themselves a raise at such a critical time in our city. Much has been said by members of this body about how an increase in the council pay will increase the ability of residents of lower means or from marginalized communities to run for city council seats. This argument on surface seems to be a legitimate argument about equity and representation. However, it's a little bit disingenuous because we know that the impediment to diverse representation on the city council is not the council salary. If we're going to make an argument about equity and representation on this body, we must first address the way in which our council members are elected. True representation of a community is not determined by the members of that community based on the current system. Voters citywide are able to choose, and powerful political action committees are able to choose with their hefty bank accounts who often represents our least and our poor and our marginalized communities. Additionally, if we want to address representation on this body by people from all walks of life, we must look at public campaign financing. When candidates are raising in excess of $60,000 for a city council seat like we have in this current election, how do you expect a person from lesser means or someone that's less connected to actually be able to compete in such a race for a seat on this city council? So Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I urge you to table this discussion. And if you need ideas on how to spend nearly $1 million over the next 10 years, I invite you to come walk with me in my community off of Fayetteville Street and talk to the neighbors who are experiencing shootings almost weekly, or talk to the members of my neighborhood who are wait at bus stops that don't have seats or covers, or talk to the neighbors in my neighborhood who are faced with a depressing choice of whether they're going to keep their homes or move outside of the city because they can't afford their housing, their food, and their medicine. This is just a ridiculous discussion to be having in the midst of a global pandemic, and I would encourage you all to, after this public hearing, table this discussion until another time, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. We appreciate you being with us. Is there anyone else present who would like to be heard on this item? All right, I'm now going to declare this public hearing closed. And colleagues, we are now free to discuss this item and happy to hear any thoughts that any of you would like to offer. This would also be an appropriate time or later on in this discussion if someone wanted to offer a motion as well. Anybody like to get us started? Councilmember Freeland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as the person who suggested this, I just want to go on record one more time and explain to the public a little more about the rationale. And then, well, first let me thank Ms. Wagstaff and Mr. Hughes for your comments. I hear you and appreciate hearing from you frequently at city council meetings. There's always, some gems in there and getting my wheels turning on things I hadn't considered, and appreciate not just your presence here at council, but also the work you do in the community. But I do want to, I want to say, regarding Mr. Hughes' comments that he made, I think that, looking at the ward system and reevaluating how we run elections is something that I'd be open to. Public campaign financing sounds really great too. Those things that he mentioned are things that I'd be curious to explore. But this is in the domain of city council, and I don't see them as mutually exclusive. The salary issue is one of many issues that converge to prevent folks from having access to serve. And, we kind of have to, in my opinion, tackle as much of it as we can, and particularly within the purview of the authority of city council. So, it really is, for me, it comes down to an equity issue. I know folks who would like to serve and aren't able to, and, there's not a tool in our wheelhouse to address some of the other equity issues that exist that prevent people from having access. But this is one that we do have access to. This is a problem that we can solve. So while I appreciate the request for a delayed conversation, I think that we should act now and have those other conversations also. It's a yes and, not an either or. Those are my thoughts, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member. I'm going to go second. And I'm going second because I want to support Councilmember Freeland's comments. I have really had my doubts about the timing of this, and been concerned that we could do something where we could pass something now that would obligate future budgets. We know we can't do that. We've heard that from our attorney. And I have been listening to my colleagues, and I am very convinced by the arguments that Councilmember Freeland has been making to us over the last few months. I also agree that some of the things that the speakers raised in the public hearing were very important. But I agree with Councilmember Freeland that this is something that we can do now that will increase equity and increase access to our council. It won't do the whole job for sure. In terms of its cost, over the next 10 years, the budget for the city of Durham will be at least $5, probably more like $6 billion. So this increase is a small drop in that very large bucket. And I think that paying council members a living wage makes a lot of sense because it is a full-time job for almost all of us. Those of us, I I worked many hours since I've been mayor, I've not had another job. But before I was mayor, I had another job. I worked a lot of hours at that job, and then I had to go and work my council job full time. It's very hard. And for those of you all with young children, I know it's even harder. So I will be supporting this tonight, and I just wanted to put myself on record at that with that. So thank you. And Councilmember Freeland, thank you for your persistence. All right, other colleagues. I don't see hands. Councilmember Freeland, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to appreciate Councilmember Freeland for his advocacy on this question. I have felt really on the fence about it for a lot of the same reasons that folks have brought up in our previous conversations. I think it is really important for people to be able to access public office. And of course, the low salary is not the only barrier, but it is certainly one of many barriers that people face when deciding whether or not to run for office. I think in the end, it's just really important to me that everyone gets a living wage. I feel very strongly that people deserve to be paid fairly for their labor. And we have been champions of living wages on this body for our employees, for our contractors, and we've at least twice now asked the state of North Carolina to raise the minimum wage to ensure that everybody in the state is provided a living wage. I think that it's important for the work of this council to be compensated fairly, and it is work. Even those of us who have jobs, and I think most of us do, are working far more than part-time to fulfill our obligations to this council. Our many board and commission assignments and the expectations that community members have of us are extremely high. So I am also going to be supporting this increase this evening. And again, want to thank Councilmember Freeland for continuing to advocate for this important change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank my colleagues for this conversation, and I want to thank Councilmember Freeland. I want to say for the record, I don't think Councilmember Freeland is tone deaf or does not have his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the city. I don't think lacks political acumen or lacks the ability to read greens. I think he's demonstrating what's necessary in government. That's be able to do more than one thing at once, even while you're under fire. You know, the dilemma, well, not the dilemma, but the paradox for me is that the reason why I'm able to do this job is because of my job, is because the way my life is configured, is because I have some things going on that would not allow me to do this job were they not going on. I guess the most compelling data point for me is that I've actually spoken to people who have said to me, well, I know that there are people who are willing to give me money if I run for office, but once I get in office, they're not going to support me. And the salary that you make in council will not support me. People, quite prominent people that we've celebrated in our community have said to me, I have people ready to write checks for me to run for office, but y'all don't make enough. That's a quote, once they get in office. I think if we prosecute this conversation as us doing it for ourselves personally, that's problematic. And that is very uncomfortable. And I would be a no right out the gate. But part of our job is to safeguard this institution. So part of our job is to bequeath an institution that is in better shape, if we can do so, more moral, more functional than the way we found it. That's just the way I look at public service. I want this office, because it's not going to be mine forever, it's a seasonal, but I want it to be in better shape than I found it, if I can do that without jacking it up. And if one of the ways I can do that is to make it more livable or possible for people whose calculus ends at not whether it's a award system. Their calculus doesn't end at whether or not people will give them money. There are some folks that have achieved prominence because of their activism who people will give money. Their calculus starts with, am I going to be able to find childcare or do everything you need to do once you're in office? The other thing is, while there's a letter of this job and there's a spirit of this job, I just don't think voters and residents in this city will accept that, well, all we have to do is just show up to meetings. I'm not coming to your PAC meeting. I'm not coming to your community event. I'm not going to committee assignments, the numerous committee assignments that we all have. I'm not going to North Carolina League of Municipality meetings to advocate for legislation that's going to make it better for our city. My sense of the job is I just don't think that's going to be compelling to voters, that you elected me just to go to these meetings. I don't have to do anything else. I don't think you'll have the job long if that's your position, notwithstanding what may be in the pamphlet. I don't think folk would just accept that. The fact of the matter is, as this job exists now, if you're going to dial it in and just show up at council meetings and not do anything else, I don't think you're going to do well in this job at all, and I don't think you'll be long in it, quite honestly. So I find Councilor Freelon's arguments compelling. I find what individuals have told me directly compelling. I totally am aware, I have full self-consciousness that the only reason I'm able to do this is because of the other things I do. And there are people who are far more talented, far more committed, far smarter than me, who can't do it because their life isn't configured the same way. So I with that, and this has been really, really tough for me, but what has, and I'll put a fine point here, what has helped me is reminding myself that I am not in service. I'm not voting as Mark Anthony in this issue. This is about this institution. This is about this office moving forward and this council moving forward and leaving it in better shape than I found it. The other thing is I raised the issue of perhaps doing it and exempting ourselves from participating in it. I still, wonder because, we issue debt, we issue bonds, which in effect obligates future councils to pay that debt. They have to take into consideration in their budgets, bonds that we passed 10 years prior to them being sat, and they're obligated to pay that. So I'm still wondering if there's a way we can explore the possibility of codifying this. And again, a future council, if they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. But if to take the pressure off of future colleagues and say, hey, well, this council said that in this year, the salary's going up, we're going to honor it. I mean, if I can provide them that cover or run that screen, I would do it. But we certainly do it when we float debt and they have to pay that. So I would be willing to explore that option further. But with that, I find Councilor Freelon's argument about equity compelling. I find my own personal data points with my constituents and people I talk to every day compelling. And I find it compelling that this isn't about us. I'm fine. But I realize that the reason why I can do this job is because I'm fine. There are other people who can't do it because their lives aren't configured as such. I don't think that's right. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Freelon, for your work and for your advocacy.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member, you raised an important point that we've discussed a work session, but I think would be good to clarify again from the city attorney about our ability or inability to obligate a future council in this regard. Madam Attorney, can you refresh us?
Sure. And the issue, Mr. Mayor, is that the statute that authorizes city councils to adjust their compensation states that that process should be done through the annual budgeting process. And you can only budget for the year that you're in. So you can't make a budgetary decision that applies to budgets that have not yet been adopted.
Is that different? That must be different.
It's the same thing as saying you can't legislatively bind a future council either.
And but different than when we pass a bond that obligates future councils to and fund that bond. Mm-hmm. That obligates future councils. There must be some difference there.
Well, you go ahead and issue bonds. And you do this with contracts as well, right? You often have multi-year contracts. and there's an obligation that's created. But in this case, there's nothing happening. You're just forecasting and saying, we would like to see compensation levels raised to a certain level in the future, but you're not actually in a process. You're not engaged in a bond issuance. You're not engaged in a contracting process. You're just forecasting it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think that's important clarification. Council member.
Thank you. And I want to thank City Attorney Rayburg. And I want to state for the record that my advocacy on this is based solely on my ignorance and my, me being a zealous for this effort, and in no way pushing back on her extremely impressive legal knowledge and when she states it. It's a Durham workaround. I'm just looking for a way to do this. And I want to thank Councilor Rayburg mainly for her patience with me and for abiding us and for the incredible advice and counsel she gives us all the time. So thank you, Attorney Rayburg.
Thank you, Council Member. I appreciate you making me think through things carefully, honestly. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member. Other colleagues, would anyone else like to speak on this item? We could also have a motion if folks wanted to do that. Councilmember Freeman.
I just had a question. I guess in the context of the previous question, is it that we don't set a referendum to be voted on by the public around a salary increase in the same way we do for a bond? There's no public.
I'll ask Attorney Rayburg if she would. Yeah.
So the referenda statute, Councilmember Freeman, does not reference putting this type of item to the voters, if that's what you're asking. I'm not sure. There are certain types of bond issuances that must be authorized by the voters and that you all take to the voters, and there are some that you can do without referenda. But there are no statutory schemes that contemplate putting this question to the voters in the same way that there are for, let's say, changing the length of term for the council members, or changing the number of people on the council, or that sort of thing, some structural things. Have I answered your question?
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, I would be happy to accept a motion. I believe the motion would be, if anyone would like to make it, to adjust City Council salaries using the Durham minimum livable wage of $16.92 per hour. To calculate City Council salaries, under this scenario, City Council member salaries would increase from $25,378 to $35,200, and the mayor's salary would increase from $29,875 to $41,536. And these salaries would continue to be increased in future years according to the Durham minimum livable wage.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councilmember Reese was seeking recognition. I'm not sure. I thought I saw his hand go up.
All right, thank you. First, I'll see if there's anyone who'd like to make that motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeland, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. And now we'll have further discussion. Councilmember Reese.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to really quickly say how much I appreciate, as always, my colleagues helping teach me about issues that I've already thought about for a long time, but y'all see it in very different ways and from different perspectives, which is one of the great things about a council like this. I still don't know how I'm going to vote. Luckily, I don't have to vote at this moment, so I've still got plenty of time to think about it. I've, like many of you, been very conflicted about this issue, about the timing, and about the fact that, as some folks have said, this will not solve the problem of how we get folks who are not independently wealthy or otherwise comfortable able to run for this council, be elected, and serve. But as Councilmember Middleton quite rightly put it, there are folks in our community who could mount a successful campaign for this office who could not afford to do it once elected. And so that is a thing we have to think about very carefully as we try to lead, again, as Councilmember Middleton said, as we think about leaving the office in better shape than when we found it. On the other side of the argument, I still have a hard time conceptually with the idea that that this is the best way to spend this money in any given year. And I think Councilmember Middleton has tried to answer that question for me, although he maybe didn't know it was, by saying we can't really think about it as ourselves. We have to think about it as the office of the city council members and how we're structuring that for folks and who the office is set up to be able to be occupied by. I hear that, but I'm still thinking about it and still listening. Look forward to hearing from other folks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I appreciate all of my colleagues' questions and comments. I am leaning yes, but as I said before, mostly because I believe that we should be tied to a living wage. It's something we've committed to for every single employee of this organization. And so I don't see it as an outlying factor, but I also said it wasn't a hill I was going to die on. So I appreciate Councilmember Freelon bringing it forward. I have consistently heard it is an issue at every level of government other than the federal level. It is not just an issue on this council, it's an issue for school board members, county commissioners, and our General Assembly members. And I think that just like when we act, it does put pressure in other places to act as well. And so I think that that is also the multiplier effect. If we move this, then it starts having conversations on county commission, on school board, on ensuring that other places that provide salaries or stipends, or however you want to frame it, are also considering what are the barriers on their boards for getting better representation or more accurate representation. And so just like we did for workers all across the city, we raised our minimum wage standards, knowing that would create pressure in the market so that other large employers would be forced to also pay higher. And I think it would work in the same way, which is why I am leaning yes on this measure.
Thank you, Council Member. Any further comments, colleagues? Councilmember Freeman and then Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I've stated before that I was a solid no, just acknowledging the timing and all, and just listening and hearing my colleagues around the issues. I completely can see my way to kind of, I mean, this is not a hill I want to die on kind of conversation, but I'm mindful that the kind of tension around where we are right now and how this funding could be shifted in other directions is top of mind. But I'm also clear that, you know, a livable wage is the least that we could set in motion for a council future, or certainly for a council future. And I'm kind of teetering at this point, but I think I'm still hesitant, acknowledging that there's just the conversation around the minimum wage, just acknowledging how many people are still making $7.25 an hour. I think Councilmember Caballero's comments specifically kind of highlight why I don't want to be first. Like, I don't want to push us ahead in the conversation. I'd rather do the work to advocate on behalf of school board members or on county commissioners, to do the work to advocate so that we go together. And that's just kind of where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton?
Yeah, listen, I get it. I mean, the optics of it, of you being first, I totally get it. The election's not over yet. If there's consequences to be paid for it, some folks still have a time to, make up their mind. the fact of the matter is there was never going to be a good time to do this. I don't care what period of history we're in. I'd be able to make a case why politicians or elected people should not raise their salary. But before the pandemic struck, we had a 20% poverty rate in the city. Gunfire was going off. There will never be a time when this will be a good time to do this, ever. The work of equity will always be inconvenient because there will always be people vested. Some of us, there will be people in the city, they will never, ever want you to do anything like this. It doesn't matter what the indicators are going to be. And then for some of us, we'll have our supporters that say, yeah, do it. You work hard, you've done a good job, do it. The finger in the wind technique will not serve us on this decision. This is one of those crucible moments, one of those threshold moments where you look at it and say, this is for the institution, this is for the future. If there are consequences to be paid, you pay them. I've said time and time again that you're not really fit to sit in one of these seats until you found a reason that you're willing to lose it for. Until you determine that price point, you will be a hazard because you'll be a feather in the wind floating here or there. You got to pick that point. I find Councilmember Freelon's arguments compelling and irrefutable when it comes to equity, and I am haunted by the conversation. There are people I would write checks for in this city for their campaign. I could not, however, support them once they got in office. I ain't got it like that. I can break them something off for the campaign, but I can't, once they're in. And I just don't think that's right. And I want people to have the option, when I'm out of this office, because I will be out. This is not forever. And this is not going to be a major payday for me, at least. So I want people to be able to sit in this office as well comfortably and not have to choose between childcare or coming to a council meeting because they can't afford it, because they can't use their campaign funds to pay their mortgage or their rent. You can't use campaign funds to pay for a babysitter. You can't use campaign funds to put gas in your personal car to come to council meetings. So I appreciate the debate. I understand the hazards of it and how non-palatable it is. But I think for the sake of the institution, I think for the sake of future generations of elected officials, and for the sake of those people who are in my ear right now saying that they'd like to do it, but they can't, I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you, Councilor Freelon, for your leadership on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. I'm going to ask our attorney again another question. Madam Attorney, for this motion, will we need to set a date, an effective date for this change, or would it go into effect immediately? How would that work?
I was just having that conversation with another member of the staff. That is at your discretion, Mr. Mayor. So you can make it effective immediately. You can identify a date. I think the budget staff, I'm not sure exactly whether they had calculated the amount that was set aside in this budget year from a particular date. It might be worth having Mr. Allure speak to that.
All right, thank you, Madam Attorney. Mr. Allure?
Sure.
Yes, the approximately $79,000 was put in the full amount so that it could be triggered at any time at the discretion and will of council.
All right. All right, colleagues. Councilmember Middleton?
Could we trigger it 5 years from now?
I believe that's just this budget year.
Oh, okay.
Madam
I don't know where I got that. I don't know where I got
Yes.
that number from, but
I was about to add within this budget year from July 1 to June 30th, July 1 to June 30th, 2020, any time during this budget year.
Thank you.
got you. Thank you, Madam Manager.
I will then suggest that to Councilmember Freeland, who made the motion, and to Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, who seconded it, that we add a dates that would these salaries would begin as January 1st, 2022. Would you all accept that?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Colleagues, I believe we've had a good full discussion of this, and I'm now going to ask the clerk if she will please call the roll on this motion, which would be to raise council pay as of January 1st of 2022 to the figures that I read out earlier. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes 6-1. All right, colleagues, thank you so much. We'll now move on to the next item on our agenda. That item is item 25. This is the resolution approving the issuance by the Public Finance Authority of its retirement facilities revenue bonds, United Methodist Retirement Homes, Series 2021. We'll first hear, this is a public hearing, we'll first hear from Ms. Desiderio, it seems. Thank you, Ms. Desiderio.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Durham City Council. Emily Desiderio, Interim Finance Director. So this is a public hearing to consider a resolution for the purpose of the Federal Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, also known as TEFRA, as required by Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code regarding the issuance by the Public Finance Authority of its Retirement Facility Revenue Bond Series 2021 in an amount not to exceed $60 million on behalf of the United Methodist Retirement Homes. The proceeds of the bonds will be used to refinance existing debt, to pay financing costs and costs associated with acquiring, improving, constructing, and equipping facilities at the borrower's continuing care retirement community known as Crowsdale Village, which is located at 2600 Crowsdale Farm Parkway, Durham, North Carolina. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Durham Herald Sun as required by applicable law. The city has no obligation to repay any of these bonds, nor will the issuance of these bonds have any financial impact on the city. The City Council is being asked to approve this item only because of federal tax law and the fact that the projects being financed is located within Durham city limits. As such, staff has not reviewed the details of the project nor evaluated its financial feasibility. Representatives from the applicant's financing team are here and available to answer any questions that you might have today.
Thank you for that report, Ms. Desiderio. Colleagues, you've heard the report from staff. I'll now declare this public hearing open. I know we have some people here who are here to potentially answer questions, but is there anyone who would like to be heard on this item at this time? And if so, please, would you raise your virtual hand? All right, I don't see anyone. I'm going to declare this public hearing closed. And now the matter is back before the council for any discussion that we might have. Or if there is a motion, the motion would be to conduct a public, we are conducting the public hearing, to adopt a resolution approving the issuance by the Public Finance Authority of its retirement facilities revenue bond, United Methodist Retirement Home, Series 2021, in an amount not to exceed $60 million.
Moved as read.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Freelon. Any discussion, colleagues? All right. If not, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. We appreciate Ms. Adams and Mr. Erickson for being here, and thank you, Ms. Desiderio. All right, we'll now move to the two items that were pulled from the consent agenda, and we'll begin with item 7. Item 7 is the outdoor seating ordinance, and Councilmember Reese had a question.
Yeah, the city manager and her priority items indicated that attachment 2 had changed. It looks to me that like attachment 2 is the ordinance itself. If I'm wrong about that, someone please correct me. Hi, Bo.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Reese. To answer your question, the modification to the ordinance amendment was to section C2, where there was a comment made at work session about some unclear language about the percentage of the indoor or the outdoor area that could be equivalent to the particular percentage of the indoor area. We removed the sort of discretionary up to 40%. But what we have realized, so that was the change that the manager was referencing at the beginning of the meeting. What we have realized though is that the version that you currently have does not show the intended and previously discussed increase from 25% to 50%. And so staff would recommend with the adoption of this text amendment, that minor change from 25% to 50% in C2. And just let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dobrinsky. Ms. Young?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to just mention that you'll note that that 50% was mentioned in the staff report that accompanied this item. So the intent was, we think, clear, but it was our error that missed it on the actual ordinance when we were cleaning up the other bit. So our apologies, but hopefully the memo helps to clarify that that was the intent from the beginning.
And to add to that, it was also in the version that was provided to you at work session.
Thank you so much.
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Reese?
Thank you. Bo, am I correct in thinking that there may be one or two current restaurants who are currently making use of the temporary ordinance that would be prohibited from using the permanent ordinance going forward? Is that right?
I believe you're referencing a couple of the restaurants that currently have temporary permits for use of fee simple property or real property that the city owns, whether it be park space or service parking lot or parking structure. Those would not be permitted under this outdoor seating ordinance. The outdoor seating ordinance is, the code is, it's speaking about the use of the right of way and the public space, sidewalk, and of course on-street parking is one of the changes here. The use of the real property is a different standard.
Right. I've since learned since the work session all about the various incredible technical challenges of zoning and use and whatnot that are involved in the fee simple aspect. I appreciate folks who help me understand that. The businesses that are authorized under the temporary ordinance that won't be permitted to operate under the permanent ordinance, have they been made aware of that?
Yes, I believe there are 3, and we've communicated to them that as of November 1st, they would no longer be able to make use of the real property.
Okay.
Believe at least 1, probably 2 of them have made arrangements for future permitting.
That's great to hear. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I had. I appreciate everybody's patience while I dug into that. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member. Yeah, I've definitely seen one of the restaurants that had previously been using city public property has now gotten they now are serving on the street, on the, parking spaces in front of their restaurant. So I'll just say that I have been very impressed that we have not heard opposition on this. We've heard a ton of support, but I was concerned that some of the restaurants or some of the other downtown businesses would be concerned. I was concerned that some of our mobility advocates would be concerned. We got a letter today from one of them, from BPAC, saying they were appreciative of the way this had been worked through. So I am, Mr. Dobrinsky, you've threaded a needle and done it very, very well. So thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just highlighting, I appreciate the work that's been put into kind of narrowing down, I guess, how this permit could move forward. I just wanted to ask two requests. If it were possible, just to make sure that we factor in some tracking around how this is having impact on the businesses that are downtown, especially noting that there's so few that are of color. I just want to make sure that that's also included. And then also, if there could be a presentation to have the conversation with some of the folks with the Mayor's Committee with persons with disabilities, that would be helpful, just to give them some understanding around the language, because I feel like there could be a miss there, and I don't want to try and explain it. But I feel like it would be helpful just for them to have some of this, to hear some background and some feedback on how we've gotten to this point. As Mayor Schewel mentioned, that one ability group has mentioned it. I don't think the other is aware of how it might have impact.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I see Ms. Young would like to respond.
Thank you.
I just wanted to seek a little clarification, Councilmember Freeman. What type of tracking are you inquiring about?
So, and who's applying for the permits?
Sure, we've got that. That's we keep all of the permits in our database, and that's something that could be very easily popped out in a report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right. Any other comments or questions? If not, we will need a motion to adopt an ordinance amending the outdoor seating permitting provisions of the Durham City Code of Ordinances.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Councilmember Freeland. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schewel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeland?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to our final item of the night, item 26, expansion of the long-time homeowner grant programs to include Walltown neighborhood. And this item was pulled by some members of our community who would like to be heard on this item. And so I will first ask if we could hear from Ms. Benita Green. Madam Clerk, could you make Ms. Green available to be heard? Ms. Green, you are available to be heard. We're glad to have you, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Schewel and council members, and thank you very much for allowing me this time. I'm here to support Walltown being added to the Long-Term Homeowners Grant Program, but also to request that Merritt-Moore as well as Bragtown be added to that program as well. And just to take into consideration that, you know, the fact that the program has been targeted in certain communities only, it really should be expanded to cover all property owners, low-income property owners in the city of Durham. That's an equitable way to be able to move forward, and it's also a more holistic plan. So I'm asking that you consider broadening the scope of the Long-Time Homeowner Assistance Program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being with us. And now we'll hear from Ms. Constance Wright. Ms. Wright, welcome. Madam Clerk, can you make Ms. Wright available to be heard? Ms. Wright, welcome. We're glad to have you with us, and you also have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, and good evening, Mayor Schewel and council members. And I, like Ms. Green, support including Walltown in the Homeowners Grant Assistance Program. But I would also like to ask the city to include Bragtown and Merritt-Moore. In 2016, the city approved a $6 million extension to Carver Street from Danube Lane all the way to Old Oxford Highway. And this extension opened the door for big development to come in and build houses and townhouses starting in the high 200s. This has caused property taxes to increase by 100 to 300% since 2017. To add to this insult, investors are purchasing houses throughout our community and flipping them and selling them for as much as $450,000, some going for $500,000, which of course that is gonna really send our taxes through the roof. As we in Bragtown have stated over and over again, our taxes are ridiculously high. are ridiculously high. Politicians and realtors and some residents say that increased housing prices will increase our property value. Well, yeah, that's true, but it will also increase us right out of our homes because we won't be able to pay the taxes. The low income tax assistance program doesn't help. At least it doesn't help me because my income, as is most residents, is too high to qualify for this low income tax assistance program. The long-time homeowners grant program will be a great program for Bragtown, and more residents will qualify for the tax assistance. $47,500 max income for a single head of household is far better limit to qualify than the $31,500. Long-time residents qualify, and most homeowners have owned our homes. We qualify because for that program if we were accepted, because most homeowners have owned our homes since 2012 is our primary residence, and we have definitely experienced incomes increase in property taxes since 2019, with 2019 taxes being significantly higher than 2015. Our only disqualification is that we do not reside in South Side, Northeast Central Durham, or Southwest Central Durham. Gentrification is destroying our neighborhood by way of removing the historic principles of our community and displacing long-term residents because of the increase in taxes. The city has touted equity and equality for the past few years. Please put your words into action by equally considering our community and considering Bragtown and Merritt-Moore in the long-term homeowners assistance grant program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wright. We're really glad to have you with us as well, and we appreciate your comments. All right, colleagues, I'll now open the floor to discussion. Any discussion on this item? Okay. Let me ask Mr. Reginald Johnson, who I believe is here at the meeting. Mr. Johnson, could you talk about what makes a neighborhood eligible for this program?
Yes, I'll be glad to. Reginald Johnson, Director of the Department of Community Development with the City of Durham. Mayor, members of council, Mayor Pro Tem, what qualifies a neighborhood for this particular program is that we have to have a neighborhood that has affordable housing investments during a particular time period. In this particular instance, the time period is from the years 2000 to 2015. When we first started the program, when began with 3 neighborhoods, it was 2010 to 2015. But when we looked at the affordable housing investments, this is where the city has actually gone into neighborhoods and invested resources for affordable housing. We found that there was, if we expanded the time, there was a period of time where Walltown would qualify for this particular program. And the reason that we're focused on affordable housing investments is just like in Southside and Northeast Central Durham, the residents there talked about how the affordable housing investments were the triggers for the increase in property taxes. And this is one of the pilot programs that council authorized us to begin.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Mr. Johnson. Let me just add and say to Ms. Green and Ms. Wright, who have raised some very important questions. Absolutely, the council agrees 100% that the countywide program, which is funded by the city, by the county and the city, needs to be that we have asked the county to double the eligibility from 30% of AMI, which you cited, Ms. Wright, to 60% of the area median income, which would vastly increase the eligibility of homeowners and in a citywide program. I urge you, and the council has already said to the county that we would support that with financially if the county will support their part financially. They're the ones that run the program, as you all know, and we need them to step up and join us in increasing the eligibility for homeowners in the countywide program. It's crucially important, and I very much agree with what you have to say. This program is limited for the reasons that Mr. Johnson said, we don't want to set up another citywide program when there already is an existing countywide program that we're just starting this year. And what we really need to do is continue the pressure on our county commissioners to increase the eligibility from 30 to 60% so that we'll do everything that you're talking about, which is significantly increase the number of homeowners who will be eligible. So I just wanted to give my thoughts on that. All right, colleagues, other comments? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've raised this concern a few times over the years, acknowledging that there are many neighborhoods that have experienced the towering tax increase, acknowledging that we moved from an 8-year cycle to a 4-year cycle. And so in 2019, folks saw their tax bills triple and quadruple in the same way they did from 2016 to 2017. And so I'm mindful that we have this limited program in mind, but I would like to say that it would be helpful to think about, in light of COVID, possibly figuring out a way to include both Merrick-Moore and Bragtown, acknowledging that these are the longtime homeowners we're trying to keep in our city. And so acknowledging the previous vote, as we said, we want to be first in going forward. I pushed back because the concern and that we're willing to spend $79,000 on ourselves and the role of council, but we've got to be willing to do the same thing for the residents who are experiencing that stress of trying to keep their homes. And so I would encourage us to consider adding both Merrick-Moore and Bragtown to this longtime homeowner grant, even if it was just the pilot for this for the 1920 year. If it would be okay, I would like to make that a motion. I couldn't hear you.
Yes, you can make that motion.
I'd like to make a motion to revise the long-time homeowner grant program criteria to include Walltown neighborhood and also include Bragtown and Merrick-Moore.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All right, colleagues, any more comments on the motion? Councilmember Freelon.
Yeah, yes. I mean, when this came up at the work session, I had a question about, well, I guess it was a concern, it was an observation about the path that this could put us on in terms of just the need. It's a need across the city, across the county. And what's gonna stop every neighborhood from calling and saying, can you add us? That's concerning because the speakers are absolutely correct that gentrification is real. It's real in Merrick-Moore, it's real in Walltown, it's real everywhere in the city of Durham. So how are we going to address that? Now, I heard, I don't know, maybe he'd said it earlier, but I was listening to some nuance that I didn't hear last week from Mr. Johnson about how a second look at the metric and the rubric we were using to choose neighborhoods could include Walltown. And so we've now got some justification, which is great, but it's bigger than the justification that the pilot is tethered to, because the issue is a citywide issue. Yeah, those are my concerns. I think, yeah. And I don't know how, you know, in thinking about the chicken or the egg with the county and how we go about leveraging our influence to compel them to join us. I don't know if that argument is strengthened by just the pilot with these communities versus, you know, taking the pressure of not bringing Walltown Merrickmore and Bragtown into the pilot. You know, it certainly puts pressure on the residents to go back to the county. But I don't know what the play is. I'm not quite sure what the issues are on the county side, and what levers we have to compel them to join us. I know that it's something that we've tried, but I'm trying to think about, you know, how this could get us to a citywide program, and I'm not sure that it does. So I don't know. Those are just some of my concerns. Yeah, I couldn't agree with the speakers more about the need. And, you know, but Mr. Mayor, like, I saw you shake your head when I mentioned this. What's going to happen next is the next community is like, hey, can we get in there too? Can we get in there too? It's just like, how do we stop the snowball? And maybe there's a question for staff. Do we have the bandwidth to absorb that snowball effect? You know, those are some questions that I've got. Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember, thank you. And I want to just reiterate, absolutely, we need a countywide program, period. And we got one. It just isn't big enough. It's up to the 30% AMI. And I'll also say, I do believe that there's a majority of the county commissioners who are willing to go up to 60% AMI. I think that majority exists right now. It may be unanimous, but I feel that from just some discussions I've had with county commissioners. And as you recall, we have a little committee to talk to them about it. And I've mentioned it to Chair Howerton as well. So that is work that needs to get done. I think before I see a couple of hands, but before I recognize you all, if you don't mind, I think I would like to ask the attorney, Madam Attorney, could you come on and talk to us about any concern, you know, what is the concern with adding different neighborhoods with different criteria for inclusion in the program?
So the concern is that we're not being consistent, right? That it's important not to be arbitrary in how we're adding communities to programs. If we have a set criteria for programs, we really should try to make sure that we are consistent with the application of those criteria. And, you know, morphing and reshaping programs in ways that are not consistent just potentially opens the city up to have to answer a lot of questions. I'm not going to say liability, but it is problematic. And, you know, our office many years ago, you may remember, Mr. Mayor, because I believe you were on council when the program was first implemented. Originally, our office had great concern about doing the program at all. And it was that tie to city activity in developing affordable housing that made us feel a little more comfortable about establishing the program and having something that wouldn't open us up to potential claims that we were extending unconstitutional emoluments, that we were violating the state constitution in that respect.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Okay, Councilmember Reese and then Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that we should already have had a program that extended city tax relief, property tax relief to American Moore and Bragtown. I believe that 5 years ago when we created this program, and I argued as strenuously as I could for a citywide program. And that argument did not win the day. I argued for it again about 3 months ago at the very end of a very long meeting in June. Are not successful. And there were good reasons that folks didn't want to buy into that. Absent a citywide program, we are left with following the guidance of our staff and our city attorney about what is permissible in terms of extending this program. And with respect to Walltown, thanks to the work of one community organizer, activity was identified that were city investments in affordable housing within that neighborhood within a relevant time. And that is what led to the legal justification for the expansion that is currently on our agenda. We don't have those same types of investments in other neighborhoods around the city. Let me say again, I believe that we should already have had a program that extended city property tax relief to your communities. But this is the path that we've been on. This is where we are today. I believe now, given where we are in the tax year, given where we are in the deployment of the county tax assistance program, that the best strategy today, October 18th, 2021, is to continue to plead with our colleagues in the county commission to make the joint city-county program that is applicable in every part of the city and county of Durham more inclusive of the folks in your neighborhoods that are in desperate need of this property tax relief. And that is what I think we ought to do. And that I think is the most responsible course for us to take as a local government. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
I had a quick question for the neighborhood advocates, if that's okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
Ms. Wright and Ms. Green, I was just curious, you all have done a fantastic job advocating for your neighborhoods, and I understand what the concern, and I agree with you. Out of curiosity, have you also been advocating at the county commission level and attending their meetings? I know that the reason that we are even having this conversation as robustly as we are is because of your advocacy. And so I'm wondering, I'm in agreement as far as so let me first see if that has been what they've also been doing, is advocating at the county commission level as well.
Thank you. Ms. Green or Ms. Wright, would you all like to comment?
Hi, this is Benita Green, and I did forward an email to the council. I also forwarded that to the Board of County Commissioners as well. So I have voiced my concerns to them as well.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Ms. Wright, would you also want to comment?
Yeah, I can honestly say I really have not reached out like that, but now that I know I need to, I will. So.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. And I think we're all in a very tight spot. I'm hearing very clearly from staff what the parameters are and the standards that we need to meet. And I think that the most effective thing for all residents across Durham County, there are many communities that are facing this issue, is for the program that has been established by the county, which will make it also easier for those residents to receive the assistance, because it's not this weird workaround that you have to do through the city. And so I am urging our county commission, and I'm urging those incredible neighborhood advocates to start leaning in on our county commissioners the way you've been leaning in on council members.
Thank you very much, Council Member, and thank you, Ms. Green and Ms. Wright. Council Member Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask for clarification from Mr. Johnson or Ms. Rayburg around the county program. Does it cover tax year 2019 or 2020?
Councilmember, I'll have to defer to the Community Development Department on that. I'm not sure.
So my understanding, council member, is that the county's program begins with the tax year in this budget year. So this is FY21. The tax bills that we just received and due in January.
Thank you, and I just appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear for my colleagues that the county program would not cover 2019 and 2020, and this is why I'm encouraging us to consider adjusting our criteria in light of the hardship that folks are under and trying to make sure that they maintain their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, colleagues, any further comments? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I comment a couple of questions. I think, first of all, I appreciate Councilmember Freeman's motion, but it seems to me that her motion is attempting to actualize the proposition we started with, and that is to cover everyone or nearly everyone, particularly legacy Black neighborhoods. And I thought that our staff was already in the process of looking at the feasibility and what our options are of expanding the program in tension with trying to get the county to raise the AMI from 30% to 60%. So I just want to understand if this motion is, are we considering not heeding the legal borders that staff has outlined? So I mean, they presented a reason why Bragtown can be brought in. Bragtown can be brought in, but if we haven't identified those other areas, then I'm just trying to understand: is the staff suggesting that we can do this, or will we just be doing it and hoping that there would not be any legal ramifications for us? Secondly, I want to say, I'm prepared to spend way more than $79,000 on our legacy Black neighborhoods. I've called for Marshall Plan type investment in our legacy Black neighborhoods in the city to the tune of millions of dollars. And I'm hoping that's something that we would consider doing that would address stabilization, that would address preservation of these neighborhoods and preserving the integrity of it. But I want to speak directly to this motion that has been made. Would this motion in effect run over or exceed the legal parameters that the staff has outlined for us as to how we can proceed adding neighborhoods? And I would say to Councilor Reese that I think his argument did win the day morally. And I think he did have unanimous desire when he presented his argument. I think what happened was that staff and our attorney told us, that there were some legal reasons why we couldn't do it. Just like I wanted to, forego any council pay raise for years, and it was explained to me that there were some legal reasons that we couldn't do it. So I guess I'm just asking, can we do Councilmember Freeman's? Can we pass this motion in light of what we've already been told by staff and council? I guess is my question.
Well, I'll try to answer that by saying that I believe we can pass any motion that we want. And I think we've heard pretty clearly from the attorney that there's legal danger in that. We would be open to, for arbitrarily including neighborhoods that are outside of this very carefully considered criteria. We would be opening ourselves up to lawsuits for people who would say that we are unconstitutionally spending these funds. So I'm sure that we can legally pass the motion. That's different from would it be wise, I guess.
And if I could add to that, I would say that the motion is to revise the criteria. And so acknowledging that we're already opening up the criteria, I tried to offer the addition, in light of COVID, that there is a pressure, an undue pressure on some of our community members as it has been expressed repeatedly here at council meetings and work sessions, from specific members from Merrick-Moore and Bragtown, and just noting that there's an opportunity here to revise the criteria. And that doesn't mean that it couldn't align so that we're not opening ourselves up for legal action or what have you. I do believe that that the case has been made for both Merrick-Moore and Bragtown, which is why I think folks are kind of on the fence about it. It's just a matter of whether there's a will. And so if the will is of the council for that to move forward, then I think that staff would kind of align the criteria to make sure that it fit.
If I might continue, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
Thank you. I appreciate Councilmember Freeman's comments. I don't understand what revising the criteria means. I think it's pretty clear that the staff has established that where we can point to definitive city action in neighborhoods, that we are shielded. But the animating spirit of Councilman Freeman's proposition resonates deeply with me. I'm not interested in kind of a Pyrrhic victory or a capricious kind of victory. I think we should commit our government and our city to doing the big things for Merrick-Moore and Bragtown and Haytown, all of the other legacy Black neighborhoods in the city. But I'm still a fiduciary of the city. I still have responsibilities to our coffers as a city fiduciary. And if we can accomplish those big things through as I said, a Marshall Plan type thing, thinking a comprehensive soup to nuts plan for our legacy Black neighborhoods without exposing us to legal action, because I think we're going to do that type of thing. And I think that's on our horizon. I think that type of action for legacy Black neighborhoods in our city is imminent. And if we can do that without exposing the city to legal, jeopardy, then I think as a fiduciary of the city, that's part of my responsibility. But if there is a way to revise the criteria, I mean, I'd love to hear what that means and what that looks like, because my understanding is the criteria is where the city has its fingerprints in terms of, investment. That is the criteria. So I don't know what revising that would actually mean. So if I can get some clarity on that, that would better inform how I would proceed on this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that it's pretty clear based on our discussion with staff that expanding this program in this way would not be legal, that there is no way in which doing it this way would be legal, that our two options are a citywide program or specific neighborhoods based on the criteria of city investment in those neighborhoods. And when we've talked about Merrick-Moore and Bragtown specifically, it has been in relation to a lack of city investment in those neighborhoods, that we are considering additional investments in those neighborhoods as part of our green and equitable infrastructure funding because of a lack of investment. And so I think that's really, we can't have it both ways. We can't say these neighborhoods are eligible for this funding because the city has invested in them and that's caused prices of housing to go up. And also the city hasn't invested in these neighborhoods enough and we need to do more. I think that puts us into a really tricky legal space. And I want us to have a citywide program. I think that, or a countywide program actually, that is administered by the county and that we participate in fully. I think that's the best way forward. It seems very, very clear to me that what has been expressed by our city attorney, and that her best legal advice is that this is not a legally acceptable way to move this forward. And so I don't think we should do it. I think we should continue to try to seek the county's cooperation for a countywide relief program that would cover Bragtown, Merrick-Moore, and the entire rest of the city, and expand this program to Walltown tonight, just as a stopgap measure for that particular neighborhood and the other specific neighborhoods where we know city investment in housing has caused price appreciations. prices appreciating all over the city. That's part of the situation we're in, that gentrification. We need a more expansive program, but I think it's very clear that the legal authorization under which we are doing this cannot allow us to extend it to Bragtown or Ardmore. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Colleagues, I think we've heard a lot of discussion on this. I'm going to go ahead and ask for a vote on the motion. The motion, as I understand it, is to change the criteria to be able to add the Merrickmore and Bragtown neighborhoods. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
No.
Councilmember Caballero?
No.
Councilmember Freelon?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote nay.
Councilmember Reese?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let me just, before we get to this next motion, let me just say again, we need a countywide program. We have a joint city-county program that's countywide, administered by the county, that goes up to 80%, goes up to 30% of AMI. The council has already committed to go up to 60% of AMI. And we have asked our county commission friends to join us in that. And I want to second what Councilmember Caballero's, her point. We have talked to the county about it. We have a committee to go to the county and formally talk about it again. And Ms. Green and Ms. Wright, we ask you to urge our county colleagues to support this countywide program. The city will do our part in the funding, and we need the county to commit to doing theirs. All right. Now we'll move to is there a motion to adopt the revised long-term homeowner grant program criteria to include the Walltown neighborhood and to continue the long-term homeowner grant program to include the 2020 tax year?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Freeman. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes. Colleagues, I do want to mention one thing quickly before we adjourn. I sent an email about this today, and as part of one of her priority items at the work session, the clerk will be raising the issue for our discussion of going back into in-person meetings. And so I just wanted to alert you all to that and to be thinking about that. We'll also discuss at that time boards and commissions and if we want to go back to allowing them to vote by a majority to go back into in-person meetings or not. So just wanted to remind you all, alert you all that we're going to be having that discussion on Thursday in addition to our regular agenda. All right. Thank you, everybody. Always a pleasure to see you. And I really appreciate everybody, all of our staff tonight, and those others who are with us, members of the public. I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 8:56 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday.